sector will be maintained.
Someone's got to develop a product you and I as a consumer are going to want to buy.
The country needs a comprehensive energy plan. We don't know how long this will last.
Welcome to this edition of For the Record. Do you have personal traits that are a bit messy, or do you work with people or know people that are messy or unorganized? If that's the case, our guest today is someone who will breathe life into organization. Jessica Dolan is our guest today. Jessica, welcome to For the Record.
Thank you.
Now, let's get this right. You call yourself the breather of...
The bringer.
Bringer
of order.
Of order. See, I couldn't even bring myself to order into your introduction. Now, what do you mean by that phrase?
I just mean that I walk into a home or an office and bring order to chaos, or just help people live better lives through simplifying and getting organized.
Now, how did you, let's start at the beginning with you so people can understand how you got to that point. You grew up here in State College?
I did.
Okay.
Yes, I graduated from State High.
Okay, and how did you, what job process along the way did you follow that you became this organization person?
I worked for a number of family-owned businesses, the last one being a rather large home medical equipment company, and I worked there for many years and started to burn out a little bit. It was somewhat depressing working there, and I also got to see people coming in with, you know, wads of paper and medical bills, and they didn't know what was what, and they were just always confused and didn't have any sense of order in their lives as far as that stuff went. It was about the same time I was really feeling burnout when the organizing shows came on TV, and I realized all the things that I just did naturally and never thought twice about, people were making a living out of. And it was a light bulb moment for me.
Now, Room to Breathe is the name of your company, correct?
Right. Mm-hmm.
And is that your own business, or is that a franchise?
Hopefully soon it will be a franchise.
Okay, well
that's in the works.
We'll get into that too then.
Yes.
All right.
No, but it's my own.
Okay, and how did you come up with the name then for Room to Breathe?
I had come up with a couple names, and I sent out those ideas to actually my mother and a very good friend of mine, and together they came back with the name. Mm-hmm. And as soon as I heard it, I just knew that was what it was.
And have you always, throughout elementary school, high school, were you always an organized person as you went through life?
Yes. Now I know that I was. I didn't realize it then, though.
Okay.
I think I've had a file system set up since I was 12.
Really?
I know, it's embarrassing.
No, it isn't. I think a lot of, certainly I have kids who need to do that. I still have to do that too. What is it that did you pick up on somebody as a mentor that you saw that was organized in that way that you became that?
I think I had a stepfather who was pretty neat and tidy, and I grew up in a house that was kept nice, and we always knew where things were and could find things when we wanted them, and it was a calming household in that regard. For me personally, I can't relax in an environment when there are piles or things out of order. I feel so uneasy. So I like being able to walk in, sit down, and just be for a little bit.
Now, I'm going to use a term here, and you use this yourself, anal retentive.
Mm-hmm.
And is that something that you've gone through therapy to figure out, or you just know on your own that you're that way?
I know on my own.
Okay.
I've also worked with a life coach to try and become less rigid in that regard.
Well, because there's a fine line there between
yes.
anal retentive and OCD.
Yes. Oh, there definitely is. And I definitely was on the road to OCD and realized it pretty quickly, mm-hmm. and have learned to come back a little
Now,
bit.
back to when you were in the medical
mm-hmm.
sales area. I certainly know from my own experience with my mother's illness and having things, organization is the key, because you have to have folders for everything, because you have to go with one agency to another agency to something else about who pays for what, mm-hmm. and those kinds of things. So from that, what made you decide then to have the guts to start your own business?
Let's see. I have a 2-year business degree, so I had learned early on that businesses often fail in the first couple years, and
Sure.
you have to go into it being prepared to stick it out for a while. So I have always sort of had a sense for adventure. I'm not really afraid of failing, because I just figure you fail forward, you learn something from it, and move on to the next thing. So when I started my business, I just promised myself that I would give it 5 years, good or bad, I had to stick it out.
Sure.
So I did, and the 5th year was kind of my turnaround year. That's when things really started to go.
And what year are you in now?
8.
8, okay, nice. Now, where did you, because it's a different type of business, where did you first reach out to find clients?
Gosh, I actually met my first client in the grocery store. Yeah, she, I forget how it even came up now, but I ended up working with her the very first month I opened, and she actually is still a client today.
Okay, so once people, an existing person stays with you then.
Some do.
Okay, and now, do people usually come to you for business help or for personal, or is it a combination of both?
It's a combination, but mostly residential. Most people want some help in their homes.
And do you find that there are certain people that have areas that one area of the house is worse than other areas of the house?
Everybody's different.
Okay,
some
it's a hit or
houses
miss
are
thing.
total disasters
Sure.
from top to bottom. Others have, home offices that are a disaster, but the rest of the house is great.
Okay, and is it more a clutter disorganization thing, or it's not a hoarder situation, is it?
I do work with hoarders occasionally.
Okay.
They are not my main target market, though.
Right.
I'm mostly working with regular old people in neighborhoods and homes, and very few hoarders.
So if I reach out to you for, say, you come into a house, and do you walk through the house first?
First, I would actually sit down with you in a somewhat neutral setting, if we could find one in the house. I like to get out of the way some questions about the goals for the space, what bothers the person, what stresses them out, what maybe frustrates the husband or the wife, depending on who I'm meeting with. And then after I have a baseline there, then we'll walk through the house. But if we walk through the house first, people just tense up right away.
Sure.
And I can't really get a true sense of what's going on. So I like to talk first and then see.
Okay, that's a good stopping point for us right now, and then we'll go forward with fixing things.
Okay.
You're watching this edition of For the Record. Jessica Dolan is our guest. Back with more right after this. Welcome back to For the Record. Our guest today, Jessica Dolan, professional organizer. Jessica, when we left off, we were talking about when you go to a home to meet with a client. Now you meet with, say it's a home and there's a family involved. Do you really need to know the personalities of the people involved to really get a sense of how to best organize them?
Yes, definitely, especially if I'm organizing an entire family.
Okay, now do you need to get individuals and then the creative combinations of people as well?
If I'm working in an office or with an entire family, then I really do try to meet with everybody one-on-one and get their honest to goodness feedback without anybody else listening, and get a feel for how they work in a space, how they process thoughts running through their mind, and then come up with a compromise of sorts that will work for everybody. And those are my most challenging projects.
I was going to say, especially if you're dealing with a family group, teenagers versus parents, certainly the teenagers aren't paying for your services or the supplies that you need to bring in. So I guess that's also a fine line there that you need to walk as well, correct?
Right. And teenagers don't usually want the help.
Sure.
So but I do work with a lot of small children. I work with a lot of 5 through 10-year-olds in playrooms and bedrooms, and it's great.
But I would think at 5 years of age versus, say, 14 or 15, you can really make it an idea for them, make it a game for them almost, so they get interested in making cleanup a good thing, as opposed to a 14-year-old's going to go, get out of my room, lady, one of those kind of deals, right?
And most 14-year-olds, after I work with them for a little bit, it's okay. It's just that initial getting started and almost being forced to do it. But then once it's started and we are working together, it's great.
Now, certainly I know in past relationships that I've had where joint closets were involved, certainly the women usually typically dominate closets. Do you focus primarily then on who controls the most of the closet?
I work mostly with women.
Okay.
Across the board.
All right. And now, certainly there are limitations to how you can organize too, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And how do you say to somebody, you have too much stuff, you need to unload?
I very tactfully say, you have too much stuff, you need to unload.
Okay. And is that met with a lot of resistance?
No, people coming to me, they're ready for a change.
Okay.
They're ready for
Certainly
help.
because they're not hoarders the way we talked about earlier.
Right. They're people looking for ways to simplify. So I was half joking when I just said that.
Sure.
But I don't ever tell anybody what they have to do.
Right.
I ask them a series of questions that gets them thinking in a new way, and ultimately they come up with their own decision on what to do with something. I will also, before we start working, I call it my pushing parameters.
Okay.
So I will set up ahead of time how we're going to proceed. So I have some clients who want me to push them until they get rid of something. I have other clients who just want to be pushed maybe once, and if
Right.
they say they want to keep it, then I drop it.
Gotcha.
So everybody is different, but I set up all of that ahead of time so that nobody does get hurt feelings. I don't upset anybody, nobody upsets me, and it's a win-win for both parties.
Now, do you usually start in common areas of the home, or do you go right to bedrooms?
No, it just depends. One of two things. I'll either start in an area that is most frustrating for someone,
Sure.
or I'll start in an area that will give instant small reward, like a bookshelf or a junk drawer, something like that. So there is some instant gratification to get them going and moving on to the bigger projects.
Now, when you come into a home or a business, and we'll get to business actually because we have some graphics we're going to look at, do you, if someone needs to reorganize their closet or something like that, do you provide the materials, or do you bring people in to do that?
It depends. Sometimes if the budget isn't very high, then we may purchase just a few things that I go out and shop for. If there's a little bit more of a budget and it's a totally dysfunctional closet, I do have a subcontractor I use for custom closets, custom offices, and that's really the best way to go.
Sure.
If you can customize a space to how you work in it and use it, that's when I see the most success.
And that's really the give and take that you get from your clients, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Now, when you took your classes to start the business, how many psychological classes did you take? Because you're reading people
Yeah.
as best to fit the program, correct?
I didn't take any, but I do joke all the time that I would love to take a psychology class now, because even just the differences between men and women
Sure.
in their spaces is pretty amazing in the way we think versus men, and
Right.
vice versa. Someday, I hope to.
But if you're in 8 years already and things are working out well, maybe you don't want to mess with that.
Yeah, I have a couple of clients that actually call me Dr. Dolan, which I do not encourage, but they say I'm their therapy session.
Sure.
They get to vent while I'm there and talk through things.
And to that level, though, don't you find that some people, maybe even, and we're getting really deep here now, maybe in a marital situation, there are those pushback issues where this is my area and I'm going to control it. I don't care what you think,
yes.
kind of thing.
Oh, I've been in the middle of some all-out marital brawls through, yes. Yeah, so I do tend to work mostly with the wife.
Sure.
Occasionally the husband will get involved. On a couple of occasions I've worked with both, and it can be stressful.
Sure, certainly. Well,
Yeah.
anytime that you commit change, a lot of people don't accept change very well, and especially in their own personal space. Now let's move on to business space,
Okay.
because that's when I first became aware of you when you put out your messy desk contest,
Yes.
which I tried very hard to win a couple years ago. And actually, I sent you some photos ahead of time, and that is my desk. Let's be honest with you. Looking at that desk, what's wrong with me?
Where do I begin?
Yeah.
Let's see, I just met you, so.
Right.
A couple of things I noticed right off the bat, but now take into consideration I haven't talked through anything
Sure,
with you. I don't know
right.
what bothers you.
Just from the looks of the desk.
Just from
yeah,
the looks of the
right.
desk. I don't like horizontal piles.
Okay.
So when things are piled across a flat surface like that, it's hard to file something away on the bottom of the pile. If you need to retrieve something, it's hard to get it without a cascading to the floor.
Sure.
So, I like to have everything vertical. So
And also from that large cup that you saw, spillage is always an
yes,
issue as well.
Yes. And then you avoid that. If something
Yes.
does spill, then the water goes under the vertical holder.
Right.
And all your documents are safe. I also noticed that you had quite a few just loose papers.
Yes.
Didn't appear to be in any category, but maybe you had your own system there. So I usually work with people to figure out a way to store by category so that when you are looking for something, you can go to it right